This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate pina colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
Sometimes you are looking for closure in the wrong places. When it comes to this concept of closure, when we go through breakups, even friendship breakups, y'all, when we have these breakups, there are a lot of questions that will go unanswered. A ton. And there sometimes may be a perspective that you don't have access to in terms of somebody else's experience when it comes to it. So whether you were the person that broke up, or whether you guys just kind of stopped talking and distance yourself, there will be a lot of questions. The goal shouldn't be you trying to get over the relationship so quickly, right? I know society kind of encourages us to downplay impact or significance of certain people. But if that is your trajectory, you will always find yourself frustrated and kind of cornered, right? With a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of unrest. Because there have been instances and experiences that I've even had recently where a lot of questions went unanswered. Sitting with the what ifs, the unknown. And I started to realize that, do the answers even matter? Sometimes they will, right? Seeking clarity or seeking acknowledgement, or somebody just saying that, hey, I wish I did things differently, or you saying to someone, hey, I wish I did things a little bit differently, can be a world of change for another person. However, we don't get that, okay? It's so interesting that people will hide from actually seeking a true connection with another person. And sometimes that comes in an apology, right? And I think on a previous episode, I talked about the difference between transparency and vulnerability. To be transparent with somebody means to just tell them something. To be vulnerable means to share something that may hurt you. Sometimes that's the one thing that was the disruption in certain relationships, okay? And it's not about being emotional, but simply being vulnerable, being truthful, putting yourself in a position to not only be hurt by somebody, but potentially to be cared for by another person. But what about when that breakup happens? That one you didn't want to end, that friendship that you didn't want to lose, it's still on your mind months later, sometimes a year later. And you're like, man, I have all these questions. And you can't necessarily ask the source. Maybe you can, but you don't want to. Or maybe you feel as if, they disrupted the relationship, so why should I be reaching out? Or maybe you were treated in such a way where it was clear that they didn't want to communicate, right? Maybe they ghosted. Maybe you ghosted, okay? But when we do that, there's still a lot of energy that still exists in that space, right? When it comes to a breakup. And there's a lot of ways to go about it. Look at the highlight reel, all right? We look at the good times that we experienced with this person, overlooking the truth of what may actually have been holding the relationship together. Sometimes we don't focus on those at all, and we just see them as such a bad person. But other times we are just simply looking for answers or looking for ways to make ourselves feel better, comfortable. But I think it's important to ask yourself, what resources have I been seeking? All right, what advice have I been taking about how I should go about this? And for me, as I've been thinking about it, I think one of the most important things that you can do for yourself is grieve your relationships. A lot of times we are so eager to move past that part too quickly, that there's still some residuals of it. And I think when it comes to relationships that are actually important to you, friendships that you had for an extended period of time, you get to recognize the realness of that relationship. Even if, somebody turns out to be completely different, or you turn out to be completely different, there's still some history there. And it's still you in that relationship, which means that you get to acknowledge all the things that come with it. And I think, or what I hear, or what I kind of disagree with, is this idea that we should just get over people so quickly. I'm not saying dwell on them, but to treat people like they're disposable is not the answer. If a person mattered to you for so long, why is it that in this moment they no longer matter to you at all, just because you guys aren't connected? This doesn't mean you can't have boundaries. This doesn't mean you can't have a certain level of self-respect where you recognize you haven't been treated well. This just simply means realizing that, you know what? At one point in time, this person mattered to me a lot. I may not have a relationship. I have a lot of unanswered questions. I can still recognize the answer I do have.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
This person mattered to me. But sometimes in those late nights, right, in those moments of vulnerability or just sitting with yourself, you have these questions come up of, do I matter? Or did I matter? Was this relationship anything real? What would it look like to have them back in my life? What would it look like for me to be in their life right now in this present moment? Have they changed? Have I changed? Do they miss me? Do I genuinely miss them? These are all questions that you can explore, but I think one of the biggest questions is, what was the reason for the ending of the connection? Why are we currently in this space now? And what has been done to repair it? How many times have we revisited this particular space? And sometimes we may desire to have somebody back in our lives without understanding that maybe this isn't the season for us to be in each other's lives. Okay? Maybe we don't fit in each other's lives. And some people may use that as an easy way out of saying like, yeah, well, people just grow apart, but they haven't done the actual work to tune into, how they behave. They may not have grown at all, but they've chosen to distance themselves from you or you them because that was the easier option. Sometimes the closure that we are looking for in a breakup may just simply be the fact that there was a break. We may have all these questions, but I think it's important to ask yourself the one question: what would it fix for me? What would change if I had this answer? If they told me these things? How much better would I feel? Or would I be walking around with the fear of it happening again? And that's what we have the opportunity to realize too. Sometimes when we are not in each other's lives, that is an opportunity to really take a look at what our lives are, what it consists of, what we actually want to have there, and what we may not want. Okay, for me, I realized throughout life, even recently in the last couple of years, there have been a lot of changes, okay? And I know that people say, as you grow, not everybody can come with you. And sometimes that may be the most hurtful thing because you want people to come with you. You think that you're supposed to have these people in your lives for the rest of your life, okay? And that may not happen. And when that doesn't happen, now it becomes a question of, well, what went wrong? I want you to ask yourself sometimes, if we continue to be the same as we were, what would that look like for me or them? Would I want the same relationship that ended? Would I want that back into my life if it already ended? Sometimes when you're seeking closure, I want you to ask yourself, am I seeking clarity? Am I seeking a conclusion? Or am I just seeking comfort? Sometimes we will get the clarity. Like I said, the clarity sometimes is in the break, okay? And also the conclusion is in the break. When we are seeking comfort, we may just like the idea of having this person in our lives and being willing to dismiss a certain need for boundaries, a certain need for care, effort, consistency that may not have been in that relationship the entire time. But we desire comfort so much that we are willing to forego all these things that sustain and create a healthy relationship. And in those most vulnerable moments when you're with yourself and you are grieving as you should, it's just simply okay to ask yourself, would I actually want this person back in my life as they are? Or am I hoping for them to be different? Hoping that this time apart changes them. They change for me. But do I ever hope that they change for themselves? And sometimes we think that we're the best thing to happen for somebody. And truth be told, we can't always say that because the best is very subjective. What somebody may choose for their life, even if they're choosing to not have you in it, may be the best decision for them. All we can do is recognize, am I treating this person well? Was I genuinely honest about how I was treating them? Sometimes you also have to ask yourself is, if the relationship that I was in, I was willing to dismiss my own needs and in turn start to develop certain levels of resentment. And now that the break has happened, there may have been other things that were taking place in the relationship. Actually, this relationship lasted so long because I was willing to abandon myself. There's so many avenues when it comes to closure after a breakup, okay? And sometimes we need to just recognize if we are looking to control, right? We're looking to have this person back in our lives because it works for us. It may not work for them. They may not be willing to do the work when it comes to us because it doesn't work for them, but that also doesn't work for you. Be mindful of the people you want to have back in your life. Be mindful of how you are in other people's lives and be honest about it. Sometimes a breakup happens because there needs to be growth. I want you to realize that closure or a breakup in itself is the closure, especially if neither person is willing to do anything differently. That's your answer. So if you spend your time spinning your wheels about, well, we had this moment, or how can they do this, or how can, does it matter if the person is not looking to remedy the situation? Sometimes your closure and your clarity, okay, and your conclusion may come in those moments when you are far away from that other person, where so much time has passed. And maybe you still miss them, okay? But you want to ask yourself, what do I miss about them? Do I just miss having the company, or do I genuinely miss this individual? And if I do miss them, am I willing to do anything about it? Seek clarity, okay, versus comfort. And see how that feels on you. And remember that you are allowed to grieve relationships. Don't be so eager to rush past that experience, because if they matter to you then, it's okay if they matter to you now. But maybe now you start to matter to yourself. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Take flight.